G'day everybody, it's Paul Raye here. Today I'm going to be talking about the difference between contractors and employees. We know this has been a problem for many years. Many people don't understand the difference, and today I've invited Suzanne Diprose along from Performance Advantage. Suzanne's a specialist in the HR area, and she's going to run us through how the contractor and employee problem sits with employers and how do we manage that. So welcome, Suzanne.
Thank you, Paul.
Suzanne, can you tell us really what, from a legal point of view, what is the difference between a contractor and an employee?
There's quite a difference actually between an employee and a contractor, and it is something that small businesses should really review and make sure they've got it right, because there's different entitlements that employees have versus contractors or subcontractors, they're sometimes called. So there has been a change in legislation that's coming into play come August this year, 2024. So if a small business hasn't really done the assessment and really are very sure that they've got contractors versus sham employees, they could really get caught out. So it's really important to actually go through an assessment process. And the ATO has got some information in the past, but this is actually under the closing the loopholes legislation. So it's become a lot more defined, if you like, and some of the myths that people have about how a subcontractor can be designated as a subcontractor versus an employee, they really need some, I suppose, education around all of that. So there are two areas that you would want to look at, Paul, and one is the subcontractor definitions and the paperwork, if you like, almost behind it, and I suppose that's almost like terms of engagement and all the rest of that you would have, and hopefully small businesses have that at least. But then there's also the other side of things, the actual practical side in how the work is actually done and managed in the workplace. So there's two factors there.
So how important is a written agreement? Does it hold water, and what would need to be in that written agreement?
Okay, so the written agreement is important, and the written agreement would have to actually define the working arrangements for them. And really what you're talking about, the working arrangements there, will have to include things such as the actual deliverables. I know I contract, I deliver a product, if you like, or a service, versus an employment contract will have that the person works these certain amount of hours. It doesn't actually have so much about what exactly they're going to deliver. And in a contract too, with a subcontractor, it will have in there potentially that the subcontractor is responsible for their own insurance, if you like, or other commercial risks. If the product or service doesn't work out or has to be redone, an employer with an employee, they absorb that cost. But if you've contracted me as a contractor to deliver something and it goes pear-shaped for some reason, well, that commercial risk is on me. And so that should be in your contract as well.
So if we have a contract, would a clause in the contract stating that I'm able to engage somebody else to undertake the work, would that be important?
It is actually very important in the contract. So your contracting company, if you like, and so the proprietary limited aspect is actually quite important versus if you like, a sole trader. And so it's actually the company that's in the relationship with your company, not an individual.
Okay, so if I contract through a company, am I covered by that alone, the fact that I'm not contracting as an individual?
Not alone, no, not alone. So there are a whole range of factors that come into play, and that should be in your contract too, in terms of that you have autonomy, that you supervise your own work, that you're actually going to deliver the deliverable to a certain specification. All those sorts of things should be defined in the contract. You'll find in employee relationships that is less so. So I suppose because of having that contract and the focus on the deliverables, as a contractor, then I would be responsible for when and how and where that work is actually done. versus an employee you often have in their employment contract that they're on site, or maybe sometimes at work from home, but working Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, all those sorts of things. That's not included in a subcontract or contractor agreement.
So to be clear, I think a lot of small businesses in particular are under the assumption that if I'm contracting somebody through a company, even though they may be performing that work on their own, they have no employees, that's okay. But you're suggesting that that's no longer the case?
It's actually not okay, and as a matter of fact, a lot of small businesses won't know that they're actually responsible for superannuation on that. So,
I'm sure a lot of small businesses don't know that.
No, and that's been the case since July 2022, and that's quite a little building up liability that someone could come back to you and make a claim on. So, yeah. Okay,
so, I mean, we understand that there are a lot of criteria, but if I'm a small business and I'm engaging someone through a company, and that contract says that I can engage other people to undertake the work, is that enough?
No, I think you've got to actually have more in there. That you should define that the contractor can't act on behalf of your business either. They can't represent your business. I think that's quite critical. There are a few things there, I think, that you need to actually have in there that you specify. And they need to have quite a clear separation of their business identity. They might even work on the location, but their identity has to be quite clear that it's them as a company working within your company. I mean, people have, auditors come in and work on site, but they're clearly a different group of people to the others who are working in that business as employees. So, the practical side of how work is done is probably the biggest element that I suppose gets ignored by a lot of employers. So, and the practical side of things is, and I mentioned before that you can't represent the business if you're a subcontractor. So you might be wearing a different uniform, or you certainly shouldn't wear the uniform and represent the business if you're a subcontractor. You should have different email, your own business cards, your own website. All these things are actually part of the assessment. So how you actually execute the work, I think we've already covered over the fact that a subcontractor can do it at any time. It's up to them to actually agree. I mean, I subcontract to businesses all the time. I arrange with them according to my schedule of when I can actually fit them in between other clients, really. So, so I'm not ever booked, Monday to Friday, 9 to 5 like an employee. So that's one thing. I've got the choice. And sometimes I actually have to change those choices as well. Things happen and I might have to rearrange something. Under a true subcontractor, I would have no leave at all. So if I'm not there, somebody else in my business could do the work and we still charge, and that's fine. But as an employee, or if you like, it's really a sham employee, somebody in the business might pick up the task and actually do the task. So that's a different kettle of fish as well. So. A big part, I think, and I certainly enjoy it as being a contractor, is that I have the choices of when, how, where I do the work. And yes, I try to fit in with the clients, but that's actually my choice of when I do that, and that's really quite important.
There's people who still talk about the 80-20 rule.
Yeah.
It seems to me that rule is only a very, very, very minor part of the whole picture.
The ATO doesn't talk about that at all. So that is gone. Yeah, and I think it's a myth, and it's taking a long time for the small business world to actually understand that. And so, they've probably picked it up from their uncle or something else like that who said, that's what we do, or, then you're safe. And the biggest thing is if you don't do this assessment, you can find out later that you're in fact got people under a subcontractor arrangement, but in fact it's an employee arrangement. And therefore you're not only are you liable for superannuation potentially, but also annual leave. So if I subcontracted to you and I was there Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, working in your office pretty well like any of your other staff, you could pay me nicely through invoice, and I'll probably get more than the regular hourly rates as a subcontractor. And I could come back to you 4 or 3 years from now and say, I was sick on that day, so actually here's my personal sick certificate for that day. I want recompense for that, right? So all of a sudden you can be up for the superannuation and then also these other employee entitlements that I didn't get as a subcontractor. I have heard of quite a few subcontractors, they don't take holidays, they keep working because of course they're paid on an hourly basis, maybe sometimes through an invoice. And so when you are actually paying a subcontractor on an hourly basis, I would be worried about that. That really does need a bit of review, because really you should be paying people for a result, an outcome. That's actually achieved. So,
So what about a case that I see quite regularly is perhaps in the building industry?
Yep.
Is where they have subcontractors and the employers pay their superannuation, but they seem to be clearly a subcontractor. How do we understand that arrangement?
Often
is that a union thing, or is that?
Well, they might in fact have some sort of influence there, but you'll notice, I don't know, on a building site, if the plumbers come in, they're often wearing their own uniform. They're often, part of clearly a different business, and that's really where the definition comes in there. Yes, they have to fit in with the builder, the overall construction, managing building company or whatever else like that, but they still have their choice. They will still say, no, we can only be there, Tuesday at 10 o'clock to go and do the, tap washers or whatever else like that. So, and that they can make a choice whether they send themselves or their little apprentice or, whatever else. They may have a huge team of people. They'll get the job done, but they don't actually you can't necessarily determine that, you want Fred to actually do that. It could be anybody who actually comes and does it by a certain time, whatever.
I understand. So just to wind up this topic, this is quite complex. I can see that a lot of employers won't understand that. So where do they go to find the resources, the information to get to bed this in properly? Is this something that you can help with, or
it is certainly some advice that we'd be happy to share with people, and I'll probably put a summary up on our blogs on our website. I'm happy to share that with you as well, Paul, if you want to do that. So just a summary of it to give people a background, but it does, as you're saying, it's quite complex. And you can't just go through one, one decision and think, yeah, now I've got it. Like the mythical, 80-20 rule, and think then that you're safe. So it does probably take an accountant to actually go through and work with them on the whole process.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Suzanne, for being here today and explaining to us the difference between a contractor and an employer. We know it's a complex matter, and thank you for offering to assist with any way that you can, and thank everybody for listening in today, and we look forward to meeting Suzanne again soon and covering another interesting topic.